The last time I talked to you about in-betweening, I left you with quite a lot more to learn. And we're going to get into that now, especially as far as weight and drag and follow-through and inertia, which is all part of weight. And these things, these principles have to be learned. And if you want to get into the business and become an animator, which I suppose you want to do someday, you will have to learn how to make good in-betweens. From there, you will learn how to be an assistant, and from there, you can go to animation. Now, this is how you see the bouncing ball in the books. It's not a real ball, because a real ball doesn't do this. A real ball will squash and stretches on and recovers to its shape. Remember, it's a sphere. And now, here comes the unrealistic part. This thing anticipates the hit in this fashion. And so there's just a repeat of that. And what I call it is a personality ball. It's only being used to illustrate what characters do. See, here's a character, goes up, assumes a normal pose, if you can call it that, and then he stretches as he anticipates the hit, and then here we go again. Okay? A realistic ball, the first part, up to this part, is the same as that one. But now your realistic ball comes down, does not change shape until it hits. Whatever you do, if you're using this and in a situation where you're using characters, do not anticipate that hit by flattening the ball before it hits. There's a famous story from MGM of an in-betweener, been there 6 months or so, maybe it was at the end of a hard day. He was in-betweening a character diving into a swimming pool. The last drawing he had, we'll call it number 9, was the guy on the way down, and the next one he had was number 11, and the character was halfway into the water with the splash coming up. So whoever he was, he had the character coming down, hadn't hit the water yet, but the splash started. Now that's a very common mistake. You anticipate something before anything has made it happen. Newton's 2 laws and all that. If an object's at rest, it'll stay at rest until something forces it to move. The object moving will stay moving in a straight line until something makes it stop. So here we have a very ordinary character. I didn't want to get into anything fancy. And he is obviously looking off to our right, his left. Something makes him go into the anticipation for a take, like that. Here's your squash. And I don't want to spend all the time closing those eyes, so I call for the eyes to be closed on 3, as opposed to this. Now, he goes into what you would really call the take part, coming out of that squash. We go down into the squash because the contrast between this and this is greater than from this to this. I mean, you could take him up from there to there, but by going down into the squash, we make it stronger. And then even as I was making this thing, of course I called for the eyes and mouth to be open here because we don't want the same timing for everything, especially not smaller things like eyes. But I discovered, upon looking at it, that if I took it off the pegs, and I do this all the time, and bending it back and taking it up a little bit makes a lot stronger thing, see? Just so you can find yourself doing that all the time. And there's a simple squash and stretch take. And part of what you might do, or have your assistant do, is overlap the shoulders so that they're not doing everything at the same time. One of them's going down, I mean, both would be same time, but they would be going in opposite directions to the main character. So you can take this up. How far up can we go? I don't know. Gosh, way up here we could go up and make it good and strong, see? Down, whee, there. So I took it up over 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and I tilted him back and it was stronger. Always remember that. Do that if you can. Simple squash and stretch. This is an acrobatic stunt. It's going up into a squash, which is an anticipation for this business of the nip up. Here's the squash, and here's my timing on that. And so he goes very rapidly into a stretch. Here's an in-between, here's the stretch. Because what he's going to do is, by athletic ability, get back onto his feet. So he goes there. Then he squashes again. There's a stretch. And he squashes again when he gathers himself up at the top. There, see that? Because he's going to drop down. He's getting onto his feet and doing it in an athletic fashion. There's the squash again. He's gotten up to the top. He's in the air. A contact shadow would probably help right there. Now I have him land, here's another stretch. And just for variety, I had him come down with one foot before the other, just so it's not so dull with both feet at the same time. So he comes up, and you can see that happening. There. Drops down. There's a stretch. Here's another squash coming up because he's landing, and he's got weight, and he's taking the weight, and he's going to go back up into his recovery. And there he is. So we've got one squash, one stretch, squash, one stretch, squash, and then back up. All that squash and stretching. And I think it looks pretty good. We'll see. Just there. So here we are. Here was some drapery. It's about 7 feet tall. You can imagine. An unseen agency pulls the traveler or the slide, whichever you want. You'll notice that this is shortened because it's only so long, so if you come from here to here, this has to lift up. Same with that. So there it goes. Now we come to the end of the slide. It just plows right into this with no slow in. It just hits, bang. And then the rest of it starts to follow through. The general line would be like that because you can only stretch the drapery so far. Now the whole thing is catching up, and it's even affecting it back here, you see. And you can see what it looks like this way. It stays right there. And now it's starting to settle. This is overlap. It's going beyond this because it had all that momentum, had all that energy in it, so that it goes sailing out by itself, because this is stopped, and the energy has to dissipate somehow. This flips around, a lot of the lines disappear, this comes back, and we finally settle down. All done. So here's number one. Number three, the wind has hit it. So it starts to billow out. It's going fairly fast, so I've got this on two drawings. There's only one in between in this stuff. You can see it's pulling apart. And 7. Now wind has really got hold of it, pulling it this way, that way. I was going to put stripes on the flag, but believe me, you got enough things to worry about when you're doing this stuff right. Somewhere in here, we should be thinking of starting a cycle, because now it's a simple shape, and I don't want to get parallel lines like this. That's not too bad, but we do not want parallel lines, things happening, top and bottom, same thing, same shape. So here we've got our cycle, 19, 21, 23, 25, and there's still a constant breeze because so here's the cycle, 19, 21 goes back to 25, 19, there. I think it works. Now I want to get into something that concerns weight. There's drag and overlap, follow through, all part of the big picture of inertia. And I've got an example here which I think will show you exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just going to go through with the extremes. And you will notice I have charts on here, and I will explain them as I go. I would put all the drawings in, but there's just too many to show easily. So there's 1 to 4, and then 6, and I put 6 in, even though 7 is the next extreme. And as an animator, what I didn't want to happen was to have that pole anticipate the bend. I did not want, number 6 has to be straight, just the same as 4, because the pole isn't going to bend until something makes it bend. That's the principle of the stationary object, or the object flying through the air. And now we've got that. Now he slides along until he hits a rock, which I happen to know is over here somewhere. There's the chart. 9 is halfway. Now he encounters the rock, which you can see faintly here, and that puts a stop to everything. Now I don't have to worry about this timing because it would just work. I'm not going to worry about having the pole hit the rock too soon. But now it's really going to bend because he's got all this weight. Now all this weight is pushing everything, bending the pole. I didn't want those arms bending, anticipating, again, I didn't want them anticipating the bend, so he comes down and he's still stretched out. Now, bang, see, he really hits, and I put in a splat here too to help. The splat is gone now, and he's getting ready to whip out. The pole is suddenly changing its direction. See this? It's starting to uncoil, and it's pulled his arms up. And of course, he's still coming down this way because this is overlap. This part of it is going this way because he's being dragged by the pole. And same again, more drag here. He's still going this, part of him's still going this way, part of him's still going that way because the pole is dragging him out. That's where all this energy is been put into the pole. Now it's coming out of the pole. And notice the timing here. He's slowing out, he's accelerating, so 24 is halfway, and then 23. There's more drawings on the slow side than on the, and again, still speeding up. The action is so fast that I don't want to squander another in-between on it, but I do want it to be accelerating. So I say slow out, which means that this in-between is not halfway, but approximately a quarter or maybe a third of the way out. So bang, here's a little splat, because there's going to be a whip crack in there, and he whips out on this. You can just barely see him, and the pole is going. This one says effects only because there's no more character. And so with in-betweens, I think that'll look very well, and shows you all this overlap, the drag, and the weight that are all part of not doing everything all at once. If the guy came down, his arms are still straight, and then his arms collapsed, then his body collapsed, then his legs collapsed, all different times. See, that's all in the world it is squash and stretch carried to a finer point. Here's a picture. I just want to illustrate a point with this, so I just animated this for the sheer joy of animation. He goes into his anticipation down there. This is just to indicate a low extreme. Now he goes, steps forward very, very vigorously. Do not have everything happen at once. All these things should overlap. Further he goes, and here's the one I want to show you. When you throw, that elbow comes way up here. You can't force your arm into that position, but by doing it, by having a weight on the end of the arm, it'll go there. And that's why pitchers have to rest for 3 days and 4 days, because that shoulder just won't take that much. Incidental point here, I put some blurs in there, and go very easy on blurs. You can get caught up and it'll look like everything's trailing a bunch of rags or something. And use the leading edge, not the trailing edge, of the object. Looks much better. That's something that we can do and no animal can do. An ape will throw like this, like that, but to do this, we're unique. Many years ago, I learned to animate a walk this way. The extreme was here, where the foot had hit the ground. The extreme of the legs being far apart was not really an extreme except for coming down. The high point was over here in the drawing previous. And then this was an accent down, and then this came out, and here we are repeating again. Now, in my bridge, I happened to be leafing through it sometime many years ago, and I noticed that they did not walk in this fashion. They walked this way. The legs apart was the extreme, but instead of going down, they went up. It was almost like a modified strut. And then this comes through, there's an extreme of the knee here, and then you start all over again. So my bridge is right. Have to agree with my bridge. Here is a simple little walk, very ordinary walk, and he's walking on a pan so his feet will slide on the paper. So I'm using this new kind of natural walk where this is an extreme with the feet apart, and he goes up this time instead of down as I was taught there. So this is what this little arrow and X means. That's the extreme up. And then here is a notation that I do not want this foot to go down with one in between. On number 2, it'll look like this. There. So that you don't get this kind of a motion with the feet. And then there's only 3 kind of main extremes. The feet apart, foot lifts off. This is what knees are all about, so that we can get this leg through there. And then here is the extreme of the knee swinging out and the foot swings down. And then the next one is exactly opposite of number 1. So I'll go back to 1 and I'll make number 7. And this guy is opposite of the first one. Now, when we animate a walk like this, we do not have him in perfect profile. We open him up just a little bit. What you might think of as perhaps a quarter as opposed to a 3/4, be about a quarter. So you can see the front of him a little bit. And even though he might walk all the way from here to here or even through, the audience doesn't seem to notice the difference. You just accept it. He walks through. So this one, you've got to be very careful with the angles, but we make the opposite. There's a little bit of a difference. You got a path for one foot and a path for the other foot, not too far apart because it looks like he's walking along spraddle-legged with a barrel between his legs or something. And so that's the opposite. If you want to animate somebody who's limping for whatever reason, maybe he's a monster struggling along like this, all you've got to do is just make any one of these out of in-between. Don't make it as perfect as you can. Have one foot a little shorter in here or whatever, and then you'll get a limp when you really don't want one if you don't have this symmetry. So now the rest is pretty much the same. We've got 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 9, 11 gets back to 1. Nothing to it. You look at him, he's off balance. He looks as if he's going to fall over backwards. Remember, this is not a picture of a man standing on one leg. That we'd have to balance him. He's in motion. And so by being in motion, he's not off balance. This is working very nicely. We couldn't get this foot underneath him because it would look too fast. The hands naturally work opposite the leg. This leg comes forward, this hand goes back. Don't overdo this flop of the hands. You want to maybe make it 2 frames behind the beat, so that when this leg starts back, the arm is still kind of just getting up forward and then comes back, because it's mostly gravity. It's not, you don't work at swinging your hands. It just is part of the walk. So about 2 frames. See, there's a little bit of a break in the wrist there, but you don't overdo it because it looks ridiculous if he's going like this. This is a walk in perspective, and there's quite a number of problems with this. You run into them all the time, and there's certain principles that I have found over the years that it's good to know. For instance, this is that same guy that walked before, and we measure him exactly, and this is a good size, and so instead of just making it any old size, I've made it exactly 5 inches from the top of his head to this spot between, or right below that, between his feet. So and that's 5 inches. And it's 5 inches because it's very easy to figure out percentages in 5. It would be even easier if we had 10, but 10 you can't use. It's just too big. So if I measure this, and then I draw number 13 to complete the cycle, I measure the foot action that looks right. And you can do that by these very important angles. So this is the opposite of this guy in perspective, but the foot doesn't slide. It comes down and stays there. Be sure that it stays without getting smaller or larger. That helps. But here's this angle, this angle, that angle, and there. Now, when I put down the reduction, you can see that this right foot has been flat. Now it's here, and so just by animating out there, I know where he's going to be. Now I measure him, and he's exactly 3.6 from here to here. And it's easy to figure because 3.6 is exactly 72% of 5 inches. Now I can take, after animating all these drawings, I would only animate 7 of them, and I'd leave the rest to my assistant, of course. A reduction of this one to 72% would fit right there. Bang. But I just showed this just by eyeball. Now we can take this whole cycle, 13 drawings, or rather 12 if you want, and place it here and farther on down, so that this one represents that, and all the rest of this will fall into place and wind up somewhere over here. Then you take 72% of this cycle, second cycle, and place the first guy here, and down and down and down you go. Another principle that I learned from Ward Kimball, when he was doing Alice in Wonderland and he did Tweedledum and Tweedledee, I asked him how he did it, and he took these 2 shapes, perfectly spherical, and he pretended they were water-filled balloons. So he played around and banged them together, perfect squash, like this, and then stretched them apart as they would separate, like this. And he didn't worry about the legs, the arms perhaps, but not. So he went through that and then got this overall motion. See, he was thinking about in a larger sense, not just putting feet on the ground. If you'd started putting feet onto the ground and making them work, it'd be very difficult, and you'd probably lose something. So I used that principle to make this funny-looking mule, and he's going to walk across this courtyard over there. So instead of thinking about where his right foot was and his left foot and all the rest of it, I just did that same thing using a sort of a kidney-shaped body, or at least a body that looked like this, pear shape, I suppose, off center. And his back legs, instead of being built the way a horse's legs are, they were just like the front legs almost. There, there, and there. And of course you got great big hoofs, and they drag and flop. When they come down, they look like this. Maybe I should do this in black. So that even the back legs look like this. And I did that, and they'd flop down like that. So you can see that I went through that whole thing, all the way up to there, without putting any legs on this guy. And then when I did, I shaded in the bottom of the hoofs, because that's an indication of what they are. And I did every fourth drawing, 1, 5, 9, 13, 17. And I would go through, in fact I did, go through and put in the breakdowns, so that from 1 to 5, I would do 3. And from 5 to 9, I would do 7. And expect my assistant to do those others and use a little common sense on the action of the legs. Because the legs don't make too much sense, except that I do want them to flop when they come down and lift up like this when they pick up. See, this thing would flop down, and so on. So I have made the rest of these. These are all the extremes. Every fourth drawing, and he kind of over in here somewhere. He kind of staggers. I had him go off to the side, and he would lift both feet up at the same time, which really looks silly. And his ears, you can get an idea of that motion, and that's a very good trick. If you've got anything resembling this scene, to think of the overall flow of action, and especially with a comic character, and put the legs on, or arms on too for that matter, because it doesn't have to be a four-legged character, and put those appendages on later. When I was doing that scene with the mule, I really had to design the character so that I knew what I was doing, and on top of that it was a down shot, which is a little difficult, but not very much. So I just tossed this off from principles that I've learned over the years. Just a dumpy looking sort of a horse, no difference between a horse and a mule as far as we're concerned, except for the ears. And that's all I was doing. So I've got this pear-shaped body, very ungainly. And the funny thing about these legs is that the front ones look fairly reasonable. Got big hoofs, of course, but the back legs are not built the way an ordinary horses or mules are. Like this. We give them a sort of a front leg, maybe a little heavier, and then this and this, and of course a little something around the fetlock, I guess you'd call it. These two legs, of course, are on the same plane, going that way. This is an extreme, actually, this way, because he's lifting it up preparatory to flopping it down. And then this one, see, each one, in a way, it represents one part of a walk. For one, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be 1, 3, 5, 7. This works back into this one, not actually, but as far as the action is concerned. So this one should be more like this. He's lifting off from the ground like that. And of course the tail. I should have given him a funny string tail with a knob on the end, like a lion's tail or something. But anyway, when this foot comes down, you give it a lot of flop like that. Works into the foot that looks like this. It's on the other side, of course, but you can even get a reverse curve to your leg to make it even sillier. So you get a big flop on the hoof coming down. I've found over the years that young animators, when they do dialogue, tend to be too busy about the whole thing. Now this is the Hanna-Barbera mouth system, but it's pretty universal these days. I had nothing to do with inventing it, but when I was there at its inception, around about 62 or 63, at Hanna-Barbera there were about 40 animators, and each one had his own mouth system. So can you imagine, it was really chaotic, and the Checkers, God love them, got up in arms and said, we want one mouth system. So they did. They came up with this one, and it has passed into universal use. Here it is, and it's closed mouth, very slightly open with the teeth, and then there's wide. This is a little too wide, actually. And then the ooh mouth. If you got those four, you've got the basis of the dialogue. And one mistake that is easily made is, for this A mouth, for the closed mouth, the upper lip comes down. Somewhere people got the idea that the upper lip line should not move. Well, this is not so. It comes down here. Here's the word animation. And we start with a closed mouth. The wide A, is a D mouth. Come down through N, H, and always anticipate an M or a B or a P, but especially an M. Animation, animation, animation. And just for something else, where are we going to go? I try to put a bunch of W's for F mouths in there, and you can see how this one goes. The E anticipates the F mouth, and then way, and E, and so on. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? They discovered at Disney's years ago, with the very best track readers, the very best animators, if they arbitrarily just took the whole track and moved it toward the head about 2 or even 3 frames, it looked better. Who knows? Why? Just because we anticipate, or more probably because the mouth starts to form the letters before you actually say them.
Hello, this is Otis. How can we help you?
You gotta be in shape to deliver these here paychecks.
It shouldn't be so good that you start to notice the mouth to the detriment of whatever the action is, and certainly shouldn't be so bad that you notice. And you have a great opportunity just by looking at television. Turn off the sound, watch the mouths, watch the gestures, and you can learn tremendously just from watching television all the time.
We get it!
Here is one of the most difficult things to do without rotoscope. It's bad enough with rotoscope, but without it, you really have to get your back into this animation dodge. So here we have a beautiful woman going to turn her head like this. Nothing too fantastic about that, except that things don't come around the curves in the same speed. I always like to start right about here, the bridge of the nose and that cross mark of the eyes, which is right on the surface of the eye. Actually, this is a skull mark, I've always considered it. So let's put the nose in there real quick. Keep the slant of those lines very rigid. I mean, very exact is what I mean, not rigid. Because a little bit of a change in angle is very, very disconcerting and very apparent. Nose. Where is her forehead going to be? Somewhere in there, I imagine. And then this vertical line that comes down, all the way down, tip of the chin. We'll put the tip of the chin there. What we're doing is building in this character. You cannot do lines between lines. There, in this particular instance, is one of the places you can. So everything that you can do that's easy and you're sure of, do it first. Then the rest will be a lot easier to do. Then we put this little cleft up there. There's a name for it, a forgotten what it is, plectrum, something like that. And get the mouth, just rough it in. And see how it looks as if it belongs. The relation between the nose, the mouth, and the chin is right. You can lift it off and say, yes, that's correct. All right, now we'll go to this eye, and we'll put it halfway, just for fun. See if it works right. I have a feeling it should be a little bit further out. And it's going to be closed. We'll do it halfway. It's a languorous look, so we're going to close the eyes. Take more time on closing the eyes and look a little bit better. So there. Now she's still looking off to the left, and we'll just throw that in there. Then we want to put our eyebrow in relation to the eye. See, you can get that relationship. And there it is, right there, up and over. You can see how high it is, see how long it is, and the shape of it. Again, watch those angles. They're very important. Not quite right. A little bit longer, but that's why we're roughing it in. Now, the other eyebrow, let's see, assuming that this brow is about right, that other eye is going to be showing up. There, I think. And the eyelid partway down, as this one is. This distance, this actual distance, of course, won't be as great as this. It'll be a distance in perspective, and it seems to be about right. So I think we've got to bring our brow out a little bit. See? Don't be afraid to go outside the confines of the extreme lines. If it looks right, that's probably where it belongs. Eyes still looking off to the left. Keep the same ellipse on the eyes. If one has an ellipse like that, the other one will be very similar. The closer eye will be a little larger, like that. But they'll be the same degree of ellipse. And the cheekbone, yes, looks okay. Down. There. I think that's about right, not too bad. If the brow came out, then you figure the cheekbone would probably come out too, because they're about the same bulge. And then we can just go there. Once you've got this much and it looks right to you, the rest is really easy. And of course, now we can build in this hair here, again in relation to this center line. And we've got another eyebrow to account for. So in relation to the eye, where does it belong? Keep it level with this one. We're just building the whole darn thing in. This particular line of the hair, again, we see its relationship to the tail, the part of the eyebrow and the eye. Don't just slavishly in between this line to that line. It might be just a little off, and that's all it takes. In dealing with thousandths of an inch, if you got them wrong, it will look wrong. So there's that. The back end of the head will probably be about an in-between. Might just be a little bit of a bulge, because this is a solid object we're dealing with. So as it goes around like that, those lines could very well go outside the lines that we're in-betweening to. And this bulge of the hair, what I don't know about styles in women's hair would fill volumes. Now the little ponytail and this barrette or whatever the heck it might be, they start to swing around this way. See, they're going in the opposite direction. The face comes this way, that goes that way. So, and because I think we're going to reverse these drawings, then we don't put any follow-through to speak of, or drag. If this was a one-time thing, she goes from 1 to 7, and that's it, especially if it was say a high-quality production, I would say drag this stuff, because we can't drag it if we're going to reverse the drawings, because then this would lead everything else coming back. And put the ear in, and this stuff, and wherever the neck seems to look well, and all this frou-frou. Now this is something, see? This line there should look as if it belongs to the eyebrow. We can't see this one, but now we can see it, and it should point right to the line of the eyebrow. And then you can get our relationship. And then this little line here would start to appear a little narrower than this, because this is in perspective, and we don't want to get it too close to the eye. So there we have it, I think. Right, so we flip that, and we've got it. Now we can roll all four of them, and that will look a little bit better with 4 drawings as opposed to just 3. You'll notice I did something here. I cut the paper and tilted her. She was like this, and I didn't like it because it was just too darn stiff. So I tilted her just a little bit, and then it looks a lot better. Just to have that sort of a quizzical tilt to the head. There's that one, that one, that one, that one. And you might, there's something else too. You might very well open the eyes right here. As I come around on 5, bing, the eyes come open. No frames. Eyes. That's one thing that the eyes can do. So I like that. It's going to close fairly slowly, the eyes, and then bing, they open up. So I'll just say eyes, open. Right like that. And then we'll have a nice little head turn. One of the things that you'll be doing someday is sitting at a desk like this, with the exception that this is what they call a 16-field disc, because you can see how much larger it is than the ordinary 12-field. These are used almost exclusively for feature films, and we won't be concerned with that right now. This is just a simple pantograph that you can buy at architectural supply stores or art stores. And what I've done to modify it is I've put a notch in here with a little rat tail file, and as you can see, it fits down perfectly over that center peg, which projects up a little bit. And we know that it's square because it's resting on the 2 rectangular pegs, so you can draw all kinds of parallel lines with this. If you need it to be a little bit higher, go to a plastic supply house. They'll give these things away, scraps of plastic like that. So you draw some parallel lines, nothing to it. Now, if we want some vertical lines, all we got to do is this. Play lots of tic-tac-toe. There. Now, there's all kinds of templates that can be had. I go crazy when I get into an art store. Here's one for large circles. They give you a little bit more than half of the circle, and then you can combine the rest of it. And then for big circles, or at least smaller than that, get this kind of a thing. But don't be ashamed to use these things, and even this, for large circles when you have to. Now I want to talk about the exposure sheet. First of all, I'm speaking in 24 frames per second, film speeds, film technology, film idiom. And here we have this exposure sheet. It's marked, each one of these little blanks is a frame of film. These heavy lines are every 8 frames. So that here's a foot, 2 eighths, and here's a second, 3 of them, 24 frames. So you can see how fast it goes by. And what I do here is tell the camera operator what I want done with my drawings. I've got them and I've numbered them. Now I say background 1, for instance, and then I say 12 field, there, and then the camera operator operates and reads from right to left. because he wants, or she, wants the most active level up on top, number 6 or wherever. We don't get into 6 fields as a rule, 6 levels that is. So suppose there's a hell drawing, but it's got to be there. It's a prop, a chair, whatever it is. So I just draw a line like that and continue down as far as I need it. Then, suppose the character's not there yet, but he's coming in, I put a blank like that. And if there's going to be 2 of them, like that. And then here's what the director tells me. He says, hold scene, scene, character enters, and as we did before, 8 frame steps. So I leave that blank. The camera person knows it's blank, and then the character comes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. The camera operator knows that he shoots this twice. We nearly always shoot things on 2s, so I don't have to go like this, 2, 3, 4, like that. The camera person knows that. So here's another one, like that, 2, 3. Now, you'll notice I try to coincide, and I didn't there, because if this was on 2s, I'd be out of sync. So that any time I have C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't do this, because that's like shooting everything on 1s. I make them coincide. Forget that. A, 1, 2, 3, so that they're like this. If we want a truck from here to here, that's how we would indicate it, and we would say truck to 8 field, 3 north. We usually give the north and south designation first, and 4 west. Now I've taken you a great deal of distance from where we were before, and I know that you want to get ahead in the industry, and I hope these things that I've told you will be of great help. And there's one thing that you can count on. You never know from where the next favor will be coming from, and who knows, one day you might be sitting at a desk like this.